Garuda was crossing the sea with hundreds of serpents clinging to his back. The bird was so vast that his shadow raced from island to island. Each downward sweep of his wings carved furrows through the water. Trees bent along the coast long before he passed overhead. Nestled among his feathers, the serpents traveled like an army camped on a living mountain. One of them reared above the others and pointed to a forested island. "Take us there." Garuda altered course without a word. He could have rolled in the air and sent every passenger plunging into the sea. Not one of the serpents could have stopped him. Yet Garuda had obeyed them ever since the day he was born. When he landed, the serpents slid down his wings and crossed the beach. Their queen, Kadru, arrived soon afterward. She was not walking. Garuda's mother, Vinata, carried her on her shoulders. Garuda watched his mother kneel so that Kadru could dismount. Vinata's back was bent, and her arms were locked around her mistress's legs. He waited until Kadru and her sons had disappeared into the forest. "Why are you carrying her?" he asked. "And why do her sons ride on my back as though they own us?" Vinata was silent for a moment. "Because I am Kadru's servant. You were born while I was enslaved, and her sons demand that you serve them beside me." Vinata had pledged her freedom in a binding wager. Even if Garuda scattered the serpents by force, Kadru could still hold his mother to her oath. To free Vinata, he needed the Serpent Queen herself to surrender her claim. Garuda knew the serpent's commands. He still did not know how he and his mother had come under their power. "How did you become her servant?" Vinata told him what had happened before his birth. She and Kadru were both wives of the sage Kasyapa, Garuda's father. One day, Kasyapa allowed each of them to choose what kind of children she wished to bear. Kadru asked for 1,000 powerful sons, all alike. Vinata chose only 2, on the condition that each of hers would be stronger than Kadru's 1,000 sons combined. Their wishes were granted. Kadru laid 1,000 eggs. Vinata laid 2. They placed them in warm vessels and waited. 500 years passed. Kadru's 1,000 shells opened first. A multitude of serpents emerged and gathered around their mother. Vinata's 2 eggs remained closed. She continued to care for them. All around her, Kadru's sons grew and multiplied, while no sound came from her own eggs. At last, Vinata could bear the waiting no longer. She broke the first shell herself. The child inside was alive, but only half-formed. Vinata understood at once what she had done. Her son was breathing, yet she had torn him from the egg before he was ready to be born. The child spoke to her. "Your impatience has left me unfinished. It will also make you the servant of the woman you wish to surpass. You will become Kadru's slave. But do not touch the second egg. If you let it open in its own time, the son born from it may win back your freedom." Then he rose into the sky and left his mother. Vinata closed her hands around the second egg. She never tried to open it. Long afterward, while the shell still showed no sign of breaking, Vinata and Kadru saw a celestial horse. The animal was entirely white. Its body, mane, and flowing tail shone in the sunlight. Kadru asked a question. "What color is its tail?" "White, of course, like the rest of its body." Kadru insisted that the tail was black. They argued, then staked their freedom on the answer. The next morning, they would examine the horse from close by. Whoever had been wrong would become the other woman's servant. That night, Kadru summoned her serpent sons. "Change yourselves into black hairs. Coil around the horse's tail until you cover it." Some of the serpents refused to take part in the fraud. Others obeyed. They became slender black strands, and wound themselves so tightly around the white hairs that no one could distinguish them from the horse's true tail. In the morning, Vinata and Kadru found the horse again. Its body was still brilliantly white. Its tail, hidden beneath the transformed serpents, appeared black. Vinata had given the right answer. She had no way to prove it. She had wagered her freedom, and she honored the agreement. From that day onward, she served Kadru. She carried her on journeys, followed her commands, and lived among the sons of the woman who had deceived her. The second egg finally opened during those years of servitude. Light burst from it and flooded the sky. At first, the gods believed a fire had broken loose and was about to consume the world. But the Lord of Fire told them that the power did not belong to him. Garuda was unfolding his wings at the heart of the radiance. His body grew until it filled the horizon. His feathers gleamed like gold. His beak looked strong enough to split stone, and the first beat of his wings shook the mountains. The gods drew back and begged him to contain his power. Garuda heard them. He folded his wings and reduced his size until he could approach other beings without knocking them down. The promised son had been born. He possessed the strength that might one day free Vinata, but his mother already belonged to Kadru, and the serpents demanded his service as well. They ordered him to carry them across the seas. Garuda obeyed without knowing the deceit that had made their commands possible. On the beach, Vinata came to the end of her story. Garuda looked toward the serpents vanishing among the trees. "I will ask them to name the price of our freedom." He followed them into the forest. As he approached, serpent bodies rose between the roots and coiled around the trunks. "My mother has served you long enough," Garuda said. "What must I bring you in exchange for every claim you hold over us?" The serpents conferred. They knew Garuda could cross worlds and face creatures none of them would dare approach, so they chose a price that seemed impossible even for him. "Bring us the Amrita." The Amrita was the nectar of immortality. The gods had won it by churning the primeval ocean, then carried it away to their own realm. Anyone who drank it escaped age and death. It was one of the gods' greatest treasures, protected by an army and by defenses no intruder was expected to survive. If the serpents drank that nectar, Vinata's masters would become immortal. Garuda made certain there could be no dispute. "If I bring you the vessel containing the Amrita, my mother and I will be free?" The serpents gave him their word. Garuda spread his wings. "Then I will bring you the vessel." The forest bowed beneath the wind. A moment later, Garuda had left the island and was flying toward the realm of the gods. He could not begin the assault at once. The journey would be long, and Garuda did not know how many guardians awaited him. A body as vast as his required an enormous amount of food. If he reached the gods starving, all his power would be useless. He went to his father, Kasyapa, and asked where he could find a meal large enough to sustain him through the coming battle. The sage told him of a distant lake where two colossal creatures had fought for years, an elephant as high as a hill, and a tortoise whose shell looked like an island. The animals had once been brothers. A quarrel over an inheritance had driven them to curse one another. One became the elephant, the other the tortoise, but their hatred survived the transformation. Whenever the elephant entered the lake, the tortoise rose from the depths to attack him. Tusks struck shell. The elephant's legs raised waves that flooded the bank. Neither brother could defeat the other, so the battle began again and again. "There you will find the food you need," Kasyapa said. Garuda thanked him and flew to the lake. He saw the elephant wading through the water, tearing up mud with every step. Ahead of him, the tortoise's shell broke the surface. The brothers were about to renew their fight when Garuda's shadow fell across them. He dived. One talon closed around the elephant, the other around the tortoise. Before either animal could react, Garuda had torn them from the lake and was climbing into the sky. Now he needed somewhere to land and eat. After a long flight, he found an immense banyan tree. One branch stretched for miles and looked strong enough to bear Garuda and both of his prey. The bird descended. The instant his feet touched the wood, a crack rang out. The entire branch tore away from the trunk. Garuda could have dropped it and risen again. Then he saw what was hidden beneath the leaves. Tiny ascetics hung from the branch with their heads toward the ground. Deep in their penance, they did not move. If the branch fell, it would crush them and every living thing beneath it. Garuda still held the elephant in one talon and the tortoise in the other. He thrust out his neck, caught the branch in his beak, and climbed once more. He was now flying with prey in both feet and an entire tree clamped between his jaws. Garuda searched for somewhere to set down his burden. He saw herds beneath one mountain, villages along the rivers, and animals in even the wildest forests. Wherever he looked, the falling branch would kill. Still carrying everything, he returned to Kasyapa. The sage recognized the ascetics and addressed them with respect. He explained that Garuda had caught the branch to save their lives and asked them to leave it. They agreed and went north to continue their austerities in the mountains. Kasyapa then directed his son to a snowbound summit, barren enough for the branch to fall without killing anyone. Garuda flew there and opened his beak. The branch smashed into the mountainside, split the rock, and tore trees from the slope. Garuda landed, devoured the elephant and tortoise, and waited until his strength had returned. When he took to the air again, he did not stop. Signs of his approach appeared in the celestial realm before anyone could see him. Meteors crossed the sky in daylight. The gods' weapons trembled in their hands. Dark dust veiled the light, and the warriors' crowns lost their brilliance. Indra, king of the gods, questioned those who understood the omens. What enemy is coming? They told him that Garuda, son of Vinata, had left the earth and was flying toward the sanctuary of the Amrita. Indra knew what the serpents would do with the nectar. If they drank it, death would no longer limit their numbers, their venom, or their power. They could not be allowed to become immortal. He assembled the celestial army around the sanctuary. The warriors put on their armor and formed several ranks. The first carried swords and spears. Behind them stood those armed with maces, discs, and weapons of fire. At the center of their formation lay the passage to the Amrita. A dark shape appeared on the horizon. It grew until it covered the sky. Garuda had arrived. Before reaching the army, he drove his wings downward with all his strength. Dry earth erupted around the sanctuary. Within moments, a wall of dust swallowed the defenders. Daylight vanished. The gods could no longer see Garuda or the soldiers beside them. The first weapons flew blind. Some struck empty air. Others crashed against the shields of the defenders. Garuda plunged into the cloud. He broke the front rank before the warriors could surround him. His beak snapped the spears raised against him. His talons tore weapons away and split armor. Whenever a group tried to reform, one sweep of his wing hurled it to the ground. Indra ordered the wind god to clear the air. A gale tore across the battlefield. The dust split apart. The defenders finally saw Garuda in the heart of their lines and attacked together. Blades, maces, and missiles struck his plumage. Garuda absorbed the assault, then drove through the warriors, blocking the path to the nectar. The last defenders scattered. Some fled east, others north, south, or west. Garuda let them go. The army had fallen, but the Amrita was still protected. 3 defenses remained. The first was a wall of fire encircling the sanctuary. Its flames climbed so high that they seemed to touch the sun, leaning toward anything that drew near. Garuda advanced. The heat reached his feathers before he touched the wall. He pulled back. If he forced his way through, his wings would burn before he reached the other side. He descended to the earth and transformed his body. Thousands of mouths opened around his head. With each of them, he drew up the water of a river. Then he climbed back to the sanctuary. Garuda released all the water at once. Torrents crashed upon the wall. The flames turned the first water to steam, but the rivers kept falling. The fire sank, broke apart, and finally went out. Garuda crossed the scorched ground. The second defense waited beyond it. A steel wheel spun over the only passage. Its rim and every one of its spokes were sharp as razors. It turned too quickly for a creature of Garuda's size to pass. If he tried to stop it with his feet, the blades would sever them. Garuda studied the wheel. At every turn, a gap appeared between two spokes. It remained open for only a moment and was far too narrow for him. Garuda began to shrink. His wings contracted, his body drew tight, and the colossal bird became small enough to fit between the blades. He waited for the opening to return. The moment it passed before him, Garuda darted through. The spokes spun around his body. The next blade closed behind his tail without touching a feather. On the other side, he returned to his full size. The third defense stood directly beside the vessel. Two enormous serpents guarded the Amrita. Fire poured from their mouths. Their eyes never closed, and anything that met their gaze was burned to ash. Garuda stopped before entering their field of vision. A frontal attack was impossible. Their eyes would destroy him before he came within reach. He beat his wings hard against the ground. Dust gathered around the mechanism, rose, and struck both guardians in the eyes. Blinded, the serpents spat fire in every direction. Garuda passed between the flames, fell upon the first guardian, and tore it apart. The second tried to turn toward him, but dust still covered its eyes. Garuda killed it as well. The vessel stood before him. Garuda had never seen the Amrita. The container shone from within, as though it held a fragment of the sun. He had only to lower his beak and drink. One taste would make him immortal. But the serpents had not told him to drink the nectar. They had promised Vinata's freedom in exchange for the vessel. Garuda took the container in his talons without tasting a single drop. He left the sanctuary through the path he had opened and rose above the clouds. Vishnu appeared before him. The god had watched the attack. He knew Garuda had held the Amrita within reach and chosen not to drink. Impressed by the bird's strength and self-command, Vishnu offered him two favors. Garuda made his first request. "Let me be immortal without drinking this nectar." Then he made the second. "Give me a place above you." Vishnu granted both. Garuda would know neither age nor death, even though the Amrita had never touched his tongue. His image would fly at the top of Vishnu's banner, above the god himself. Garuda offered Vishnu a favor in return. "Now choose something from me." Vishnu asked Garuda to become his mount. Garuda agreed to carry Vishnu through the worlds. His emblem would remain above them on the divine banner, fulfilling his wish to keep a place above the god. Vishnu allowed him to continue. Garuda was still carrying the vessel when lightning split the sky. Indra had hurled his thunderbolt. The weapon struck Garuda's wing with a detonation that shook the air around him. The bird did not fall. His flesh was unmarked, and his talons still held the vessel. Garuda knew the thunderbolt had been forged from the bones of a great ascetic who willingly gave his life. Out of respect for that sacrifice and for Indra's weapon, he plucked one feather from his wing and let it fall. The feather drifted down through the clouds. It was so vast and beautiful that those who saw it gave Garuda another name, Suparna, the one with magnificent feathers. Indra understood that force would not recover the Amrita. He moved in front of Garuda. "Why did you steal the nectar? Do you mean to drink it?" "No, I must place it before the serpents. They promised to free my mother if I brought them the vessel. If they drink, they will become immortal. They will not drink." Garuda explained his plan. He would set the Amrita before the serpents and fulfill the agreement exactly. Then he would demand that they acknowledge the payment and release Vinata. Once they had done so, his promise would be complete. Afterward, Garuda would draw them away from the vessel for a few moments. Indra could descend and recover the nectar before they drank. The king of the gods agreed. As a sign of their alliance, he offered Garuda a favor. The bird asked that serpents should henceforth be his food. They had enslaved Vinata through deceit. They would no longer be his masters. They would become his prey. Indra granted the request. Then he vanished into the clouds to wait for the appointed moment. When Garuda returned to the island, light from the vessel announced him before his shadow arrived. Serpents emerged from the trees, the rocks, and holes in the ground. They had demanded the impossible. Now the Amrita was hanging between Garuda's talons. Kadru joined them. Vinata remained apart. Until Kadru acknowledged her release, she was still a servant. Garuda landed and placed the vessel upon a bed of kusa grass. "Here is the Amrita you demanded. Do you acknowledge that the price has been paid?" The serpents crowded around the container. They recognized the radiance of the nectar and could not deny what stood before them. "The price has been paid," they answered. Garuda turned to Kadru. "Do you surrender every claim over my mother and me?" Kadru had given her word. Before her sons and the vessel, she had to honor it. "Vinata is free. You are free with her." Garuda looked at his mother. For the first time since the wager, no command bound her to Kadru's side. The serpents pressed toward the Amrita, eager to drink. Garuda spread one wing across the vessel. "You are about to touch a drink guarded by the gods. Purify yourselves in the sea and perform the proper rites first." The serpents did not suspect the trap. None of them wished to lose immortality by profaning the nectar. They left the vessel and rushed toward the water. As soon as the last serpent reached the beach, Indra descended from the clouds. He seized the Amrita and vanished with it. The serpents returned moments later. The bed of grass was empty. They searched the ground, the trees, and the sky. Indra was already beyond their reach. Some believed a few drops might have spilled onto the kusa grass. They began licking every blade where the vessel had rested. The grass was hard and sharp. It split their tongues lengthwise. From that day onward, serpents have carried forked tongues. They gained neither the nectar nor immortality. Vinata approached her son. She would never again carry Kadru or obey her commands. Garuda lowered himself so that his mother could climb onto his back. Then he opened his wings and carried her away from the island. Below them, the serpents tasted the air with their newly divided tongues. By the time the shore disappeared behind Garuda and his mother, no command could call them back.